Hey, yo.
These videos are satiric reviews. You don't have to agree, but don't bitch about it. I hate this channel.
Hey there, I'm Social Injustice Warrior V Infuso. And I know what you're thinking. You clicked on this video so you could be first. So you could be the first one to head to my comment section and go, V, you made a mistake. Scott Hall wasn't in ECW, he was in WCW. You don't know what you're talking about. And you know what? Maybe I don't half the time, but this time, you're the stupid, ugly, bald, bearded bastard, so how about that?
Ha ha! You're always laughing at me, but who's crying now, huh? Ha 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 ha! Wait a minute, I made a mistake.
As it turns out, Scott Hall, for a very brief time period, did in fact work for Paul Heyman's ECW. Upon being let go from WCW in 2000, either because he had been cheating on a relative of one of the company's higher-ups, or to better battle his own interpersonal demons, depending on who you ask. Despite all the goodwill you'd figure Hall would build up with WCW management, what with him being one of the founding fathers of the NWO angle, and a huge part of the company's success, WCW management was not willing to bring him back in. Despite this, Kevin Nash would continually bring Hall up on screen, probably trying to pave the way for a return to the company for his friend. A return which unfortunately never came. But Hall, to his credit, regardless, was still staying busy. After being released from WCW, Scott Hall almost immediately signed with ECW. Seriously, the man wasn't a free agent for a full month. The topic was even covered on IGN at the time. And here's some interesting tidbits I pulled from the short article. According to the Extreme Federation, Hall offered his services as a tryout. He will be wrestling on the shows, but his opponents have not been named. That's pretty interesting how they referred to Hall's tenure with them as a tryout. And when I used the Wayback Machine, I'm not able to find these exact articles, but I am able to see that ECW was already immediately promoting him as a roster member, despite Hall saying that this was just a tryout. ECW, to their credit, were treating this potential signing as the big deal that it truly was. Also from that same IGN article, ECWWrestling.com, don't bother using it now, spoke with one of Hall's friends for comments. He's so mentally and emotionally pumped right now. He's looking forward to just going out there and tearing the house down. ECW has given Hall a second chance to prove that he has indeed cleaned up his act. If the former outsider can stay focused, his name value can be an enormous help to the struggling promotion as they attempt to secure another network deal. Which is profoundly sad because both Scott Hall and ECW at the time were clearly in rough shape. It's not hard to imagine that they were both on the Deadpool at the time. So I guess in that sense, they were the perfect fit. Outside of that, however, the two were polar opposites. Hall was a made man. He was a WWF and a WCW guy. A major name. One of the most important men in the industry at the time. While ECW was the pro wrestling underground with an obsessive fan base that rallied against all things WWF and all things WCW. So I guess the real question was, how would the ECW audience, an audience groomed to hate all things WWF and WCW related, how would they react to Scott Hall's appearance on their home turf? How would this audience of counterculture greet and treat a huge part of the culture it stands against? The answer? With a gigantic pop. The ECW crowd embraced Hall immediately, as if he'd always been one of their own. And that is a bet that I would have lost good money on. Of course, Scott brings a level of credibility, star power, charisma, and as one not Cuban would say, machismo, he was also still a mainstream star. So he was just about as anti-ECW as it gets. It was surprising to see this crowd take the liking to him that they did. Throughout his very, very brief tenure, Hall took on the likes of clickmate Just Incredible, Rhino, and Sal E, not Sally, Sal E, of the Full-Blooded Italians. So he wasn't exactly setting the wrestling world ablaze here. He practically sleptwalked through those matches, relying on the basics and his normal shtick. And to be fair, that's really all he needed to do. It worked. It was over. Even with a die-hard ECW audience at the time. Now, ECW and WCW enthusiasts may be scratching their heads listening to this, and you might not even believe any of what I had to say had it not been for this evidence footage that is being played to the sound of my voice. And there's a reason for that. None of Hall's appearances in ECW were actually televised. He only worked less than a handful of house shows. That's right. ECW was able to court one of the biggest stars in wrestling at the time and never bothered to put them on TV. To be fair, the guy did leave almost as soon as he showed up, so maybe just a weekend of house shows was good enough. Not to mention, Hall had no real interest in working for Paul E. That's Paul E, not Paulie. He accepted the gig to try and show that he was still valuable, and now was on his best behavior with his demons behind him. That, of course, was not true, but this was at least a nice attempt. Unfortunately for Scott, WCW would not hire Hall back following a short stint in ECW. It's sad because at this point in time, both Scott Hall and ECW were far from their heyday. ECW was in its dying days, and Scott Hall was heading for an all-time low in his life. To make matters even stranger was that ECW was in such financial debt at the time, and the way that they hemorrhaged money at such a rapid speed. In order to save face, Paul Heyman told his roster that he wasn't paying Hall for his appearances. And you know what? When that's a defense, when that is your primary method of saying, hey, I'm in the right here, maybe just throw in the towel. Maybe just throw in the towel and call it quits. Anyway, for what it was, that was Scott Hall's time in ECW. And you can thank me because now I just made you smarter. You're welcome. Knowledge is power. Subscribe.
Well, let me tell you something, brother. You're watching the Social Injustice Warrior v. Infuso's channel, dude. So if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too want to become a VTard, don't forget to like and subscribe, and click that little bell icon to get updates and notifications. Ooh, tell him what up, Mach. Ooh, yeah. Follow the man on Twitter, yeah, because we all know it's not stalking if it's on the internet, yeah. Join the madness by joining the Discord, and if you have a moment of time and a free $1 to spare, head over to the SIJW's Patreon, dig it, where you can request videos, get exclusive videos, and early access to content, yeah. Or go down to PayPal, where you can buy the shirts, brother. But most importantly, just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.